Trumpet.
So one of the first things I wanted to pick up again with you is you were talking about storytelling and mindfulness.
Yes.
Now that's very interesting. Have you ever done the mindfulness course?
Yeah, so I've been a Zen practitioner for over 20 years, and I'm also a teacher in mindfulness-based stress reduction. And I teach meditation and mindfulness in and with story as well. So I run a range of retreats. In fact, we've got a retreat coming up towards the end of April, which is based on Red Riding Hood, which is obviously looking at our shadow side, etc. And so using Red Riding Hood and also meditation and mindfulness techniques. And I've been running meditation and mindfulness workshop courses using creativity, so a whole range of them, path to creativity and creative writing and mindfulness for, 7 or 8 years now. And we moved online when the pandemic happened. So we're doing that. And then actually in the summer, we're going to be holding a live retreat here in the Yorkshire Dales in this beautiful farm, very remote, where you're steeped for 5 days in the story. The story is the Conference of the Birds, and is a kind of pilgrimage to yourself, using meditation, mindfulness techniques, and creative exercises.
So you must know or have read Natalie Goldberg.
Yes.
Because
I love Natalie Goldberg.
I love Natalie Goldberg, especially Writing Down the Bones, which was her first.
Yes.
It's one of only 2 books. There are others, but one of 2 books that I would recommend to anyone that wants to write.
Yes.
And principally because of her Buddhist outlook on life, which I'm not a Buddhist, Taoism is my sort of bag, that's what I like, but I do appreciate Buddhism very much. But it's the honesty and the sort of sometimes brutality of being a writer that appeals to me, because she gives these very short chapters with an explanation, and she talks about writing from the gut, as it were, when you've got fire in your belly, that, having the passion. But also she brings in writing exercises that she's done with her classes and describes how it works for them, and describes in one scene where she sees someone that was writing quite upright and then eventually was bent down over the paper because they were writing from the gut. What have you taken from Natalie Goldberg's writing?
Well, I really love many of her exercises, which I've done. And also there's a wonderful bit where she talks about the monks of Mount High. In fact, I went to Mount High to see the running monk. And, this idea that when you're writing, it is like doing that, being the marathon monk. And, if you don't, with the Mount High monks, if you don't complete the journey, it's, you commit harikiri, so it's like, if you don't show up fully on the page, it's kind of off with your toes, chop off your hand. It's that sense of that this is the most important thing to be, and to be really present. I developed some of that work a bit further, and in fact on Storyversity is a course called The Writer's Way, which Pete Armstrong, who I run the retreats with, leads. And The Writer's Way uses very much meditation techniques, and to allow you to really come to yourself, to bring yourself to the page, to develop your writing. Slightly different from Natalie Goldberg's work, but in the same kind of area of kind of really awake to the page, awake to what's actually happening inside you, and awake to what's happening in the world around you. I think so many of us sleepwalk our way around the world. I did a interview with Ben Ockery a couple of years ago at the Yorkshire Festival about his book, A Prayer for the Living. And one of the things I asked him, because at the beginning of the book it says, read slowly. And certainly me, and I'm sure you and many others do, is that we skim read, we scan, but because we're trying to, gorge things as opposed to taking our time to really absorb what's on the page. And it was a wonderful conversation that it said that he puts this now in all of his books because he wants to wake people up. And it's that sense of arriving at either your reading or your writing, not in a rush. We are all guilty of it, and I'm certainly guilty of it. But it's certainly something I work on, and I work on very much within my Zen practice as well. I meditate every day, usually with a group of other people. I run a meditation group 6 times a week, and people come from all over the world, and it's that sense of stopping for half an hour a day, which I think is really important, because then you can see what's happening. At our staff meetings at Settle Stories, we start the day with meditation. And no matter how crazy, even I remember when we used to run live festivals, and when you're doing a live festival, everybody arrives, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and there's 56 million things got to happen before doors open at 10. And I would still have everybody there, and I would still say, we'll all meditate first. Because that sense of actually being quiet, being present, allowing yourself to arrive means that you can make better decisions. You do so from a place of sustenance, from a place of stillness, as from a place of kind of craziness and rushing around.
So it's being in the present, as I always think about it. It's just always being in the present. And it is something that we can do, but needs cultivation because of what you're saying, the disturbance, especially with digital devices. Well, that leads me to a question that's just occurred to me, is that I write a bit about, on Jelly Trumpet, about, I don't like the phrase, a writer's block, but I call it an impasse. And my theory is, well, I know this for a fact, is because I used to keep, you've heard probably, I think I've mentioned it to you before, a medicine journal. So I used to write, I still do, write about my writing and all the creative stuff I do. So it becomes like a coach. And, it's full of tips from workshops and from books, etc. But essentially coming back to that, and we'll call it the writer's block. The writer's block for me, I discovered for me, was that I was simply asking the wrong question and being fixated by that question again and again and again. And so therefore it was an impasse. What would you say to creatives about when you get to that impasse? How would you tackle it?
The first thing I think is go for a walk. Put the pen down, go for a walk, let it go. I think that when we grasp at anything in life, whether it happens to be your writing or, the song that you're creating, or the dance piece, or indeed, a project that you're managing, or you whatever you want in life, the more you grasp it, I think you're not free, you are caught. There's a wonderful story about the way in which monkeys are caught in Thailand, where, and I think it's Jack Cornfield writes about this, but others have too, where in order to catch monkeys, there is a trap, which is like a coconut shell with a slit in it and with sweetmeats inside. And the monkey puts their hand in because they want the sweetmeats, a bit like we want all that social media scrolling and all of that nonsense around us. And the monkey's caught, and the monkey's caught, and the monkey can't get away, and the monkey's desperate to get away. The only thing the monkey needs to do to be free, joyful, and happy is let go. The moment the monkey can let go, they're free. And that's the key thing. I think if you're banging your head against a brick wall, go out for a walk, forget about it. I think unless, obviously there are different decisions one makes when there are certain situations one is in where it's a life and death decision. Someone's very ill, or, you are, you're with somebody and they're having a heart attack. You need to respond in the right way to ensure that they get the care that they need. But very often, actually, when we're so caught up in things, the one thing we should do is to walk away and let go. Take a pause, take a breath.
Getting out in the fresh air into nature, I think, as you say, just going for a walk is so beneficial. We forget it. We forget that, you know.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And it's the thing, if I get really stuck, then that's what I'll do, is I'll go out, go for a walk, have a cup of tea, or even go and lie down in bed if necessary, you know.
There's many ways to tackle it, I think, and it's finding what works for you, you know, going and I tend to isolate myself a lot. So I have entries in my medicine journal from when I first started with things like go and see people and just talk to them, go for a walk or listen to music. I don't know if I told you this story before. When I first started writing very seriously, I used to play Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve.
Oh,
and
right.
if you know that tune, it's the moment when the violins kick in. And I think you go, it's like you were talking about Peter Brook, who I respect greatly. And he has a section at the end of his book. I can't remember what his book was called now, about theatre and theatre exercises. The play or something like that.
There was, there's one about provocations. There's one which is not the empty space, which was his most.
Could have been, because he talks at the end of that about mask work. Which, you know, and I've done a really hardcore mask workshop, which is like 2 days of being in different types of masks. And it's interesting that when you isolate your face, you become, especially in the full mask, which you must have seen, in the full mask, you mold your face to that and you become an automaton, basically. It's called the neutral. And he talks about that. Peter Brook talks about that. And that and the music and the other things, I think you tap into another level of consciousness. I don't know if you'd agree with that. And that's a place to go to. So when I'm stuck sometimes, I will go back through my diary and go, you know, go and see people, idiot, play some music, have a good time. But that is with repetition and working on yourself and your creativity, you get to that. You know, it's like learning to drive. I mean, everything is, you know, mirror, signal, maneuver, and then eventually you're just driving instinctively. It's the same with writing and creating, I believe, once you get into that space.
You have to exercise the muscle, which goes back to what we were talking about earlier with young people in schools and should it be taught. That creativity, being creative muscle has to be exercised. You can't just expect somebody to, you know, just be, of course, there are, of course, you know, various geniuses around, but common folk like myself, you know, we need to exercise the muscle, you know, and that means we got to keep on doing it. You got to have a go. You got to try it out. You've got to, but allowing then yourself to surrender to it. So I've been also practicing as well with my storytelling. So I did a storytelling performance for a group. When was it? Wednesday, I think, evening, with a last week on Zoom, and I read through the story several times. I hadn't performed it very often, and with the storytelling, you're extemporizing a lot, improvising. You're not. It's not like a script that you've got that you can hang on to as an actor. And then when I got to presenting and to performing, I really tried to just be very, very still and allow the story to come out. And I believe that it does. And there were a few people there who'd seen me perform it previously, and they said this time was even better, and was that there was a feeling as though the story is then channeled through you. And when we're being creative, and lots of people have talked about this, isn't it? It's a bit like there's, you know, the hand of God, as though somebody's there and that you're in flow, you know, and it's getting to that point where you're in flow. You've got to be still. You've got to allow that flow to come through you. Otherwise, it's not possible. You've got to be, and it's like when you're responding, whether you're writing, whether you're directing, you've got to be able to, unless you're an automaton, you are responding to this moment that's here now, this moment about what's, it's like, so often in life, isn't it, that we have conversations where there's something we're worried about or whatever, and we have a conversation about what we think is going to happen in the conversation. And then we go and have the conversation, and it's nothing like it.
It's so true.
Nothing like it.
I love your description of that, of the channeling thing, which I've not really thought about for some time. For me personally, when I reach that moment of stillness, and it comes at random times as well, like stepping into the shower, getting in a car and driving for about 10 minutes on a motorway. It's just my brain just gets into that realm. And that, I love the description of you channeling that story and that becoming a performance, all because I suspect you switched everything else off and you were just attending the story and letting it happen.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And we all know when we're in the zone, isn't it?
Yeah.
We all know. And musicians have talked about it when they've, written incredible songs or pieces of music. And we, in all art forms, it happens where there is, and there have been people who've written, a play in a weekend that's gone on to be some incredible blockbuster masterpiece. And it's because you are allowing, in a sense, that creativity to flow through you. And it's not about holding on. If we hold on to things, then I think they can escape us because they don't, it can't flow as freely as you would like. Now, that said, you can't just sort of lie there and just channel life. We still have to get up. If you have to go somewhere, you have to get a train ticket. You have to, there are practical things to consider. It's not just lying here doing nothing, but actually there's an awful lot that can be achieved by stop, wait, think about what you're doing, then go and do it.
I like that, and it threads together with what I was talking about earlier about Natalie Goldberg and the fire in the belly. Because it occurs to me, it's like a battery. You're charging your creative battery and you're getting up enough energy, and then you relax and take away all censorship from your mind. Not let that question, because with stillness, I like the calm technique, and I do, when I do meditate, standing like a tree, that's the standing meditation from the Taoist principles. And that teaches you to just let thoughts go by. So you create that energy, that battery, you charge that battery, and then think about channeling it by just letting it go. Because you can always come back and edit it, can't you?
Of course. Of course. You can always come back, but it's actually having a space of just like, let it go. Just allowing and not kind of... I'm a great believer in... I can't remember whether was it Natalie Goldberg who says this, or somebody who had said, so she looking at her writing books, wondering which one it's in, where, we have like a little God jar. Was it maybe Julia Cameron, Artist's Way, that you can have you want to make a wish, something that you want to do, to be, to achieve, to whatever, write it down, shove it in the jar, forget about it, and let it go. Now, it's like, so I remember once somebody explaining it to me like this. It's like, when you go to a restaurant and you order a meal, you order your meal and you trust that the meal will arrive. So you trust. I was there in a lovely little cafe in Ambleside last weekend, and I ordered a goat's cheese salad. So this goat's cheese, I didn't know what sort of plate it would come on, how big it would be, exactly what would be in it. I knew there'd be some goat's cheese, obviously, and salad-like stuff. But, exactly what it was going to be like, I didn't know. But I trusted the goat's cheese salad would arrive. I didn't go to the kitchen going, is it ready? Is it ready? I trusted. And I think it's the same way with creativity and also the things that we want in life is you put in the order to the universe, great belief, put in the order to the universe and trust. But don't hang on to what the outcome's going to be. Don't think, the goat stew salad is going to be like this, because you might be disappointed then. Just allow it to come in. It's the way that it comes.
It reminds me of something which I think is Natalie Goldberg, which is about feeding your compost heap.
Yes.
So you have all these ideas and they don't quite work, or when you first start creating, you try and shoehorn them in somewhere and it just doesn't work. But if you lay them down and they'll come back to you, and it's happened to me literally. I went on a writer's retreat once with the Arvin Foundation, and I spent the time, who was it? We had Simon Ney and a lady, Sue, I can't remember, who wrote Birds of a Feather. But I went there and listened to all the talks, but I was trying to write a script, and that script was about a time-travelling hotel. And I thought, well, I'll put these characters in and I'll make them brothers, just because write about what you know, and I've got a brother, etc. And it just didn't work. It was rubbish. 10 years later, I wrote it as a short story, and the first thing that occurred to me was a mother and two daughters. So I'll put that in, and it worked, not great. I mean, it's something I can go back to. But it's that trust of leaving stuff alone and seeing it, because you'll make all these other connections unconsciously until you need to write something, you want to write something, and then you have the fire in the belly and you channel it. That's great.
Exactly.
I could go on. Trust.
Most important.
I could go on talking to you forever, but I'm going to ask you one last question and then we'll wrap up. So we've done. I could, talk to you for hours. That's great. So earlier on, you were talking about going to a school and asking them what sort of story they wanted. And you said that predominantly it was a scary story, a horror story.
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
Certainly the older children, year 5s and year 6, always want scary stories. And I think that children want to, and young people, it's like testing your boundary. There is a safety in the scary story because it's going to end in a way where you're going to still be here and you're going to be all right. And that you can face your demons and the things that you find challenging in life, because they through scary stories. That's one thing. The second is that if you're doing a scary story and you are really taken in by it, you're there and they're there on the edge of your seat and you're very focused. You can't think about something else. It's like if you're climbing on a climbing wall, you can't be thinking about something else because you've got to be very, very focused about where your hand is, where your feet are. And it's the same with fear, is that when we are caught with fear, we cannot think about something else. We can't think about the washing, the ironing, what I should have done, what I should have said. No, we're focused here. Actually, when you are focused and when you are present, not only does that in the end make you happier, but it actually is a calming, it's an easier way to deal with life. And I think that it's partly that, and I think it's partly that by hearing and listening to scary stories and getting over them, getting through them, I think that young people learn to face their demons and face the things that are scary in life, which we all have to do to deal with what life has to offer us.
Lovely. Very, very interesting. Lovely. I'm going to wrap it up there, but we will talk again. We will talk again because it's been an absolute delight. So Sita Brand from Settle Stories, thank you very much.
Thank you.